Michael Caterino. Okay, Dr. Michael Caterino is the director of the Clemson University Arthropod Collection. Shortly after he got here, he's made a lot of good decisions through the years, but one of the best decisions he made early in his time here at Clemson was to hire our speaker for today, Dr. Michael Ferro. Dr. Ferro got his bachelor's degree at Central Missouri State University in 2001 in biology and chemistry. His MS degree at University of Missouri in entomology with Dr. Bob Seitz, and his PhD at LSU in entomology with Dr. Chris Carlton, doing the beetles of woody debris was his dissertation work. Did a couple of postdocs at LSU after that on emerald ash borer and on freshwater insects as biological control of invasive aquatic weeds. Had a variety of other jobs after completing those tasks, and came on board with the Clemson University Arthropod Collection in 2015 as the collections manager. A full-time job, taking care of the collection, day-to-day development, maintenance, making the collection accessible for teaching, research, public outreach, and that sort of thing. But Dr. Ferro hasn't just stopped there at doing that job. I counted 39 refereed publications with 28. He's the senior author on insect diversity in rotting wood, leaf litter, cacti, Osage orange, various kinds of fungi, and at least 15 different groups of insects. And that's in addition to 27 outreach publications and a book on dragonflies and damselflies of Louisiana. He was the executive producer of a documentary. He created an NGO. He's made 53 presentations at professional meetings and 11 invited presentations at professional meetings. He's an inventor. He has designed and invented a pocket net for aerial insect collecting that you can stick in your pocket, a point cutter to make little paper points for mounting small insects. He created a 3D printable insect emergence chamber attachment. I don't know if that's patented.
No, it's free.
And he's also designed the insect bile racks that we use over in the collection now, which is, I think, a marvelous creation that he's done. He's taught 23 courses other than the course he currently teaches as instructor of record, even while he was an undergraduate senior. Amazing. 6 offerings, though, of the very popular course on insect biology and diversity, beginning in 2019. He's teaching it again this semester, a very popular course. He's brought in 9 grants, over $50,000, and I counted 79 other professional projects that he's been involved with through the years. With collecting expeditions also and other professional travels to Jamaica, Hawaii, Brazil, Thailand, Costa Rica, Taiwan, Ecuador, South Korea, and several of the more distant U.S. states. I'm not going to go through the awards that he's received, except to say that most notably and most recently, he was awarded, as you can understand from what I've been saying, the college's Outstanding Technical Staff Award a couple of years ago. And so we are really honored to have my friend and colleague, Dr. Michael Ferro.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much. I'm going to get this back from you so that people far away can hear me. Hopefully they still can. Okie dokie. Recent doings and happenings at the Clemson University Arthropod. It's actually technically Arthropod Collection, but John pointed out that it is a bit of a museum these days, so we'll see what happens. Just to put things in perspective, Clemson University entomology turned 100 years old. at Clemson University back in 1988, so long before many of you were around, 36 years ago. So at the time, we had 32 faculty. We had 16 more technical employees. We had 12 undergraduate students. Undergraduates were a really major part of the program back then. We had 21 graduate students, 18 undergraduate classes, 18 classes, 17 classes for graduate students plus 7 labs. And that year, or those years coming up to that, entomology had actually published more papers than all of the other departments in the college combined. So where are we at now? Well, things have changed. We got 5 faculty. There's only one on campus, Mike Caterino. We really only have 3 people teaching classes, Mike Caterino, who's faculty, Dr. John Morse, who's emeritus, and me, glorified staff. We got 1 to 3 undergraduate courses. Don't ask me what the third one is. We got 4 to 6 graduate courses, depending on who we can pull in from other departments or bring back out of retirement. We got 4 graduate students that I can count. There might be some more at the Rex, but I'm not aware of them. And hopefully, I know John is picking up another master's student next year, and hopefully Dr. Muhammad will be getting a couple of students as well. Now, a lot of people like to say, well, times have changed, Mike. It's not 1988 anymore, the glory days. But the fact of the matter is that we live in a neighborhood where all of our neighbors have a lot of entomologists faculty. The average is 24 per state at whatever institution has the most entomologists. If you remove the 2 outliers, Florida, which deserves plenty of entomologists, and if you remove South Carolina, the average is still 24. And the reason we're down so low is just simply because we've had 3 faculty members kind of poached for better jobs, and we've had an awful lot of people that have retired and not been replaced, although I do need to point out that Adler, Benson, and Morse are still coming in pretty much every day. Can you imagine the accolades that the administrator would receive if they realized that we could hire 19 more faculty here at Clemson? $2 to $3 million more on average a year in funding, 30 more graduate students overnight, guaranteed, cannot fail. We did it in the past, and all of our neighbors are doing it as well. I think you might get a building named after you if you could pull that off. So anyway, it's not all doom and gloom, however. Please appreciate that after John was not replaced, he and his wife pulled together a little more than $1 million, and that was matched by funds. And the John and Suzanne Morse Chair of Arthropod Biodiversity was created. Mike Caterino was hired. We'll learn more about him later. Eric Benson. So appreciate that Patricia Zongoldi, who was the first faculty urban entomologist hired in the United States, and Eric Benson built a magnificent urban entomology program here at Clemson. There are buildings off campus. There are employees working. They get contracts. They have 10,000, 20,000 cockroaches ready to go, live cockroaches. So if you need to do a big study, if you need to test a product, they're ready to go. They have a wide variety of varieties of bed bugs. So if you need to find out if your thing can kill this bed bug or not, and it's funny, they named the bed bugs after the city they were collected in. So anyway, none are known as Clemson, though. But after Dr. Benson retired, again, he was not replaced. So he came back half-time to keep the machine running. And he established a fund in order to create an endowment to replace himself. Terminix is given $1 million. These are companies in South Carolina that are willing to give hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in order to replace him because they know that it's good for business to have an egghead at the university on their side. And so there is money in entomology. So it's not all doom and gloom. Here at Clemson, we also have a magnificent thing, the Wheeler Fund, donated by Al Wheeler. It generates $4,000 a year for students and faculty to go on collecting expeditions. We'll talk about some of those adventures here in a little bit. This is an amazing opportunity. You can go anywhere you want and catch bugs. We have a wide variety of money. Where I got my master's, there was one thing you could win as a graduate student. Where I got my PhD, there was one award you could win. if it works out that you can win it, that's one thing you can put on your CV. Here we have a wide variety of opportunities for students to get money and to enhance their CV. We have our own South Carolina Entomological Society. Not every state has its own entomological society. It's pretty active. We have a spectacular meeting every year. They've upped the graduate student award, $2,000 to outstanding graduate student. There are now 2 awards of $500 each for undergraduates that have done outreach in entomology, and there's a $100 reward for each of those categories: high school, undergraduate, master's, and PhD, for oral and poster presentations. So again, many opportunities to engage in entomology. I was the president of this, and when I became president, we got a new logo and we got a new web page. So go there and have some fun and look around. It's not too bad. We got a journal. Our journal turned 40 years old this year. And so again, Journal of Agriculture and Urban Entomology. The page charges are 0. They don't publish that many papers, but they tend to publish pretty good ones. And so it's nice to have a journal associated with your state. So a little background about the museum itself. The agriculture building burnt in 1925. It was at the site where Sykes Hall is now. Whatever entomology collection we had at the time was lost. So they hired a guy from North Carolina, Franklin Sherman. He'd been in North Carolina for a while. He was a spectacular entomologist. And they built Long Hall, and this was finished in 1937. So the west wing of Long Hall, so far as I know, has been the home of the entomology collection since 1937. Now, there are really 3 eras that have occurred at the museum itself. The first begins with Sherman. Sherman was very, very forward-thinking. He was not just interested in what are the insects that immediately impact agriculture. I mean, that's the initial reason that we want to study entomology here in the United States, was how the insects impacted agriculture. We started studying entomology in the United States before we even knew that insects could transmit disease. But Sherman was very forward-thinking, and he said, we need to know every insect in the state, whether it's eating your crop or not, because it might be beneficial, it might be a predator, it might be a parasite, or it might not be anything at all, nothing to get worried about, but we need to know all of them. So he began a card collection, our first database, 11,000 cards, every species found in the state that was known. What was the species? Where was it found? What's a citation for where that record came from? All those have been digitized. I don't have them online yet. He also started the pinned collection. And so we have an enormous number of specimens from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And then it kind of falls apart after that. I think they literally just filled up the drawers. We have a few 70s, 80s, 90s. But we have a magnificent pinned collection that includes an enormous number of small flies and small wasps that most of us would completely overlook. But Sherman set that foundation for making sure that we have those specimens, and they're very well identified, incredibly well identified. The next era is the John Morse era. Really, he got here in the late 60s, but we'll claim 74 is when it all starts. And this was a couple weeks ago, and he is standing on a rock in a stream in the evening, showing students how to do things. One of the major contributions of John Morse, among all of the other things that he's done, is about 125,000 vials with 750,000 specimens of mostly aquatic and also immature insects. This takes our collection and sets it on top of all of the collections in the Southeast, with the exception of Florida. Florida has more pinned specimens. We have way more aquatic immatures and aquatic alcohol specimens. I've been to North Carolina. They have practically nothing. I've been to Mississippi. They have practically nothing for aquatic invertebrates. These are vitally important if you want to understand water quality and if you want to understand changes that have occurred over the last 40, 50, 60, 70 years. This is a major, major contribution. Mike Caterino shows up in 2014, and I would really argue that we have two eras running parallel right now. We're still in the John Morse era, and then we got the Mike Caterino era. He won about a $500,000 grant, collection improvement grant, and was able to double the footprint of the museum. So this is the west wing along hall. You've got the hallway running down the middle, and all of that area covered in red or circled in red. There's new material for us to work in. That collection improvement grant was able to take something that looks like this and turn it into something that looks like that. And so this contains a lot of cabinets that are not appropriate to keep specimens in these days. You will get bugs and damage to the specimens. There's no way to really move around this. We don't know what's there. And in the new materials, we can really work well. The other thing that we did, for some reason, the fire department really didn't like that we had 125,000 vials full of alcohol in open shelves. So they had us put them into fire-resistant shelves. This is nice. Maybe it's a little safer. One problem. The open shelves are 15 inches deep. We have 5,000 vial racks that are 15 inches deep, and they work very well. But when you move them to the fire-resistant shelves, these are 19 inches deep. And we could spend several hours going through all of the hell that went into figuring all of this out, but there are no products you can buy. There are no humans that can help, no companies, no nothing, to try to be able to create a 19-inch long, 2-inch wide, 2-inch tall vial rack. Can't be done. So it took way too long, and I finally figured out a system. I have people who do duct work cut me out squares, and I have 50 pounds of squares that I walk into the museum with, and I cut, and I bought a brake, and I invented a tool, and I build my own unit trays now for $6.50 a piece, as long as I don't count my time. So anyway, we need 5,000 of those, but we're doing well. So anyway, I can put another 100,000 vials in the collection because of the new unit trays. When you open up a collection, when you redo things, all of a sudden you get visitors. And so we've had an enormous number of visitors from just down the road all the way to the Smithsonian. This is just a few of them. Many of these people helped identify specimens that we had. In some cases, they sat down and identified several thousand specimens to species. In other cases, they brought specimens and gifted them to the collection. We've got quite a bit of nice stuff here. We've had a lot of people that have done a lot of good research now that the pinned collection is open again. Now that we have space, we've got space for student workers, volunteers, and researchers. It's fantastic. We've got several of these have moved on to become either professional entomologists. There's a professional artist up there that works in entomology, another professional illustrator, and several more people here that are probably going to move into academia when they leave as undergrads here. Loans. When you can get to your bugs, you can send them out. And so I've mailed out about 18,000 specimens over the last few years. The ants, the tree hoppers, the false click beetles, the cerambycids, the assassin bugs, the flat bugs, the gerrids, the lady beetles are all in the hands of people that are working on papers right now, either with me or without me, to cover the fauna of those groups here in South Carolina. Tree hoppers, we had an undescribed species, male and female, from California that got described. And false click beetles, I had collected a species, undescribed species in Louisiana, and because of some collaborative work I'd done with a guy in the Pacific Northwest, I had another undescribed species that we had here in the collection, and both of those got described. Donations. When you open your doors, all of a sudden everybody wants to give you a donation. So hooray to Steve Mix. He and his wife gave us almost 1,400 pinned Lepidoptera, mostly South Carolina, but a few magnificent things that he got from other parts of the world. Billy McCord took an entomology class from John Morse in the mid or early 70s. Billy is a character. We'd say he's on the spectrum now. I love him. But his collection is perfect. You cannot make a butterfly more symmetrical. The antennae are perfectly out. It looks like it was generated by a computer. We got 3,400 pinned specimens from him, mostly from South Carolina from the 70s on. He's still marking monarchs. He's tagged about 50,000 monarchs on the coast of South Carolina and shown that they're moving from South Carolina down to Florida and back up again. They're not mixing across the Appalachians. So to him, monarch populations are fine on the coast, whereas the rest seem to be falling apart. Billy took John's aquatic insect class, and he collected more than 1,000 specimens. I'm sorry, not aquatic, immature insects class. He collected more than 1,000 specimens of immature insects, and some of them say ex ovum. Ex ovum means that he went and collected the moth, got it to lay eggs, raised up the caterpillar, and then put the caterpillar in alcohol, identified it because he knew what the moth was, and presented it to John. It's a magnificent example. And we got his whole botany collection, which I've sent and skimmed into the herbarium. This just came in 2 weeks ago. W.P. DuBose, he was here at Clemson. He was a medical entomologist, but in the 50s and 60s, he collected an awful lot of Homoptera, or what we used to call Homoptera, about 2,000 specimens, and some very interesting, we have a screwworm life cycle here, some very interesting artifacts. And so very excited to get that. It was all frozen. We sterilized through freezing, and now it's in a cabinet, and I'll need a couple of weeks to go through that at least. Richard Peigler graduated from here a long time ago. He is a world expert on silk and a huge fan of Lepidoptera. So we receive an enormous number of specimens from him. We have all of the silk moths of the United States in our collection donated from him, all the species, including some that are only known from a few dozen specimens. We have paratypes donated from him. These books, the books start at about $200 or $300 a piece and go up from there. It's a wonderful collection. We have some books that are not in the Smithsonian, and he gives us silk. And we just got a care package from him a couple of days ago, which included a silk scarf made from silk that came from a moth in the family Lasiocampidae, which I didn't know that you could get silk from that. And so anyway, a really spectacular, wonderful individual to know. Jan Siegler, the last donation that she gave us was more than 27,000 beetles. She'd given us multiple more donations prior to that. Jan had collected beetles in every state park in South Carolina, every county in South Carolina, every state in the United States, and 44 countries around the world. She wrote 3 or 4 books on beetles of South Carolina that were more or less technical manuals with keys, descriptions, etc. When she turned 88, she sold her house, packed up her car, and drove herself to Minnesota to be closer to her family. And she's still with us. Yes, Jan is an amateur, an enthusiast. She did this for the fun of it. And John's the one that influenced her to get started on what eventually became the books. And so this is it's been spectacular. She gave us a lot of material, some stuff we didn't have. Very, very nice. So who are the people that are working in the museum? Because that's basically what the museum is doing, is what these people are doing. Mike Caterino showed up, and he's pulled in $1.3 million in grants since he got here. There's money in entomology. Those 19 faculty members, think about that. Some spectacular grants. He's had a wide variety of postdocs, 3 postdocs, 6 PhDs, and 3 master's students. Anyway, some incredibly amazing and memorable people, and many of these have been hired and are strung around the world or have moved on to PhD programs. So he's had 60 publications. He's described 160 new species since he's been here, since 2014. He's added about 100,000 specimens to the collection, and he has really cemented the fact that the mountaintops, the highest peaks of mountaintops in the southern Appalachians are more or less absolutely, utterly unique. There are anywhere from dozens to hundreds of endemic species in the leaf litter. of arthropods. So there are places, there are literally, again, hundreds of species that are found on that mountaintop and that mountaintop alone, the end. The next one over has a whole completely different set. So he's really cemented that this is a magnificent Sky Island complex. Well, John, the problem with being local is nobody really appreciates you. John's a titan. If John would go over to Georgia, they'd be blown away. You got to bring in somebody new to really appreciate what they've done. He's been retired for 16 years. He has 200 plus publications. He's worked with more than 40 graduate students. He maintains the Tricopter World Checklist. He's looked into giving that up, and it's going to take a team of I don't know how many people in order to do that. And he's taught the Highlands course, the EPT course. That's mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies. If you want to work in government and do water quality monitoring, you have to know your mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies. And so he's taught this course at Highlands for more than 30 years. And as he said, there was actually a crowdfunding that was put together, more than $14,000, paid for about half of it. And a film crew came in, followed him around for 2 weeks, and made a documentary, an award-winning documentary that's now available on waterbear.com about John and the course and what he's done. Olivia, the young lady that directed this, she wanted to get a master's in film studies. She was accepted to Harvard. She was accepted to Princeton, but she went with Yale instead. And so this is a good documentary, a very good documentary. Since I've been here, John has had two master's students, a PhD student, 3 visiting scholars, including Lucas, who's in the audience today from Brazil. And he's just picked up a very, very large grant with Dr. Peoples, working with researchers in China and researchers in Brazil. It's incredibly difficult to work in those places because of the paperwork involved. And they are looking at long-term changes to macroinvertebrate communities and streams due to landscape changes in the surrounding area. So John is actually going to be able to take samples that he collected in 1968 as part of his master's research and didn't get around to working with, identify those specimens from 68, go back to the streams next year, put out a blacklight and see what comes in and compare those 2 points. It's incredibly, incredibly exciting. And next semester you're teaching aquatic entomology as well. Yeah. So anyway, John's up to a lot. He puts in more hours than I do. What do? I made that into that. Easily 200,000 or 300,000 different movements were required. Either moving furniture, cleaning, moving specimens, et cetera, et cetera. It's really not worth getting into. Everything had to be rearranged phylogenetically. Anthony Dushinsky updated all of the nomenclature. We made all new header cards for about 12,000 species. Most of the specimens have been moved into new unit trays. Everything's had to be numbered. In some cases, I can tell you on the inside of the door what species are in what drawer. In other cases, I still need to do more work. But it was an awful lot of work. We don't need to worry about that. We're up and running. We have a library, about 1,000 books, about 11,000 reprints, which are in those file cabinets and the file cabinets behind. I went a little nutty and I took pictures of every one of them. So you can digitally, they're available online, you can flip through the reprints that we have in the collection and see what we've gotten. If you want to come over and look at them, you're welcome to do that. We own the hallway between all of our rooms. And so I went ahead and tried to turn the hallway into as much of an exhibit area as possible. So it's kind of pretty. We've got lots of artwork. We've got specimens, and we've got all sorts of things that people can look at. We have a lot of students. I have one student that left a note and said, thank you. I walk through this hall every day, and it's a lot of fun to see all of this. So this is the public face of the museum. We've got a little thing that scares people, and I have handouts that I give people all the time, and we get families and kids. and occasionally workers that have come through, and the electrician sees something neat, so he brings his wife by the next day. And so it's nice to have a public area. Everything in green has been cleaned out by me, down to the scraping the floors, spraying the walls with Clorox, and then repacked. And some of these rooms have been cleaned out and messed up and cleaned out several times over the years. Bycatch. So when we go out collecting, if you're light trapping, if you're using pheromone traps, if you're using sifting, you get a lot of bugs that are not your target taxa. So South Carolina does a bark beetle survey every year at all of those sites. And so we get those from the Forest Service. Every single year I get about 500 samples. We photograph them, we database them, and we put those available online so that people can go through and see what we have. This is a leaf litter sample. So we have several thousand samples now that have been photographed and available for, these are specimens we haven't been able to get to, but an expert might be able to be interested in them. I had a guy from New Zealand email me. He saw some very rare flat bugs, family Aratidae, and he said, those are really rare. Can you please send them to me? They might be undescribed species. And so this pays off every once in a while. We have a lot of bycatch that we're working with. For the fun of it, I put together a workshop on staphylinids. We brought in about a half dozen experts and then had about 20 students. We called it the staff meeting. It was ever so much fun. Because that worked so well, one of the guys that was there, he does a bark beetle workshop. And he said, let's do a bark beetle workshop. Let's do it in 2020. And that didn't work out. So then we thought, let's do it in 2021. And that didn't work out either. But 2022, we had bark and ambrosia beetles here at Clemson. Clemson has a spectacular, if you ever want to do a workshop, I highly recommend it. They have a spectacular infrastructure for that. They have a way that you can get a bank account through them. People can pay into it. You can pay out of it. It's $20 a day to stay in the dorms, and it's $25 a day for food. So your participants would only be spending $45 on room and board a day. Highly recommended. It's a great way to bring in experts and learn. Creative inquiry. I got a lot of creative inquiry. There's some, and here's some more, and I'm not going to show you all of them, and here's some more, and I got one in the back that I've got lots of creative inquiry going on. Ticks. Nico's not here. So there are people that are doing tick surveys here in South Carolina, standardized tick surveys to get them and look for diseases. You run this, you have this, it's a certain width tick drag that you go, and you go 50 steps, and then you stop, and you look at yourself, and you look at the tick drag for ticks. So we've been at, a dozen places. You have to do that 50 times each. We did the math. Nico Artley drug his tick drag over an area, not a length, an area of a square mile and a half. We got one tick. We think there might be endangered ticks here in South Carolina. We're not sure. We're going to work on that. Absolutely extraordinary. Craziest thing in my life, because I'm good at catching ticks. Didn't get any. Very interesting. Xerxes Society is doing a lot of stuff with fireflies right now, and they've sent me out several times. Go to this place and catch the fireflies that are there and don't die. And so that's been a lot of fun. I've also been out with them several times looking at potentially endangered fireflies. The fantastic collaboration, an enormous amount of fun to be out in the middle of the night. Gadgets. He mentioned some of the gadgets. This is a lens out of an LED flashlight. You can buy them for $1 or $2. This is a hose clamp you can buy for $1. You got $3 magnification that works almost as good as a 10 by jeweler's loop. I can give this away to kids. So when I do outreach at botanical gardens, I put a string on it, and I can give the kids a magnifier for $3. It doesn't cost me that much, and they love it. Absolutely love it. Pocket net. Yeah. Everybody, the little kids absolutely love the pocket net. I built this is a clamp and the bottom of a butter dish and a jeweler's loop. And now you have a very cheap microscope. You can move the jeweler's loop up and down. You can hold the specimen with clay, and you're good to go. There's a thing called a Winkler sampler. If you want to collect insects out of leaf litter, they cost $80 a piece. That's my $3 do-it-yourself. I've had people that said, I went to Indonesia. We ran both of them side by side. Yours did better. Aspirators. You got to suck up a little bug. This is a little one, costs about $1, $2 to make. You can beat the crap out of it. Kids love it. I give it to them at the botanical garden. They go around, they suck up bugs. We dump them into a big empty aquarium, and they look at the bugs and absolutely love it. The one over there, when BioQuip, which supplied entomological supplies, was still alive, that was a $40 aspirator. I'm building them for 10, and I use those for students in my class. And the nice thing about this is not only do they work well, but I get them back. The other cheap $5 or $10 ones that you were buying would come back in pieces, and it was just a pile of trash, and you'd have to buy new ones. So I published this in Hamuli, a newsletter of Hymenopterus. This is my fault, but I didn't have much to do with it. This is a pinning block. They were $40 a piece, made out of aluminum. I was whining about why can't we 3D print these. So Brian Riley, who was an undergraduate when I was doing my PhD, when he went on to do graduate work, he came up with a 3D print design. Jenna Crowder, who is my TA, she added to that. And so now we can make these $40 pinning blocks for practically nothing, and I can have my students use them, or I can give them away to kids that are interested in entomology. I built a black light setup at the cherry farm so that you can go out, you spread out the sheet there, you plug it in, and there you go. Bugs fly into the sheet, you collect all you want. I got a nice little sign there that says what to do and what not to do. The mercury vapor bulb will melt you, so you don't want to touch that. We also established, this was with the entomology club, here's the cherry farm, there's a big patch of woods next to it. We established some trails. Part of them are blocked because of the last storm, but we've established some trails. I made a nice sign out of the cherry farm so that people take a picture of that. You know how to make a label for your bugs. Please roll the logs back when you're done. So this was a little bit of a home improvement that I enjoyed. I use insect points. If the bug is too small to pin, you glue it to the tip of this point, and the point is on the pin itself. I use about 10,000 a year, and what you're supposed to do, you cut them out one at a time. And I said to myself, you know, this is BS. We're way past the year 2000. I'm old. I got a PhD. I ought to be able to do something about this. So I got a laser cutter, fiddled around for about 6 months, and now I can laser cut these. They're not the best, but they're the world's second finest entomological points. Emergence chamber, I worked with an engineer, and this is a spectacular little gadget that you can telescope on and turn a box into an emergence chamber. You can leave it on the side, or you can run it down on the bottom there. I've got 48 of these running in Georgia right now in a pole barn. In a pole barn in the middle of a field that floods. And so you come in and you can see the line where the water got up to, which is well above the bottom of my emergence chambers. But there's a seal. So the emergence chamber is not damaged, and I still have perfect specimens that have not been flooded. I'm very, very excited about that. I teach a class, as he mentioned, and I thought it was 5 years, but I guess you're right. It is 6 years now. So 6 years ago, I said, I'm only going to teach this class for 2 years. And surely by then you'll have a new instructor in, but sadly that hasn't happened. 40 students, a lab. It's a spectacular class. Here's the problem when you have a collection manager teach a class on introduction to entomology. He feels that the collection is the most important thing to do. And if you get a bunch of students that do good collections, now you're buried in specimens. What do? Some of them go to the museum forever and always. Some of them are in the teaching collection. But thankfully, Pat Wooden came along. And I had mentioned, wouldn't it be cool if we could pass out drawers? Something to inspire the next generation. And she created museums in miniature. She's received 2 grants, one from Entomological Society of America and one from the South Carolina Entomological Society. It's 100 bugs, specific bugs. There's a book that comes along with it with pages about pretty much every one of these. And right now you can go to the Central Library and see one. We've got about 20 of them out. Some are at libraries, some at schools. We have a wait list. And this is one of the reasons that she got the job that she's got. It's good to build gadgets because when 2020 hit, guess what? I got to put together an entire class with a lab remotely. So this is the kit that I sent home with my students, including a collecting box. So you got a little mini museum or microscope, you've got pinning blocks, you got everything you need remotely. We go to Entomological Collections Network meeting every year. It's $2,000 if you want to rent a table, but I'm Mike, and so I usually get a table and just shove it in the back and nobody says anything. And so you have an advertisement for Museums in Miniature. You've got a whole bunch of my handouts and my junk, my DIY. You've got my emergence chamber there, and everything has Clemson University written on it. We also go to Entomological Society of America annual meeting. I'm the guy that runs the booth for the Coleoptera Society. I did not notice this when I took the picture. I only noticed it when I put together this talk. The bald guy up there, he just got a PhD from Clemson in entomology. The guy on the right sitting down, he just got a PhD in Clemson entomology. Where is he? The next bald guy over is Mike Caterino. He's a professor of entomology at Clemson. The young lady all the way on the right is just got a master's in entomology here, and the young lady sitting down is still an undergrad here in entomology. So this was a pretty good representation of also all of these handouts. They're mine, and they all say Clemson and Coleoptera Society. I also have several posters that I had Clemson undergraduates do the drawings for, Morgan Summerlin. These are posters about nerdy things like pins and forceps. Museum managers, collection managers love these. These are up all over the world. They're in Taiwan. They're in Central America. They're in Korea, everywhere you want to go. Singapore. There's a book. I wrote a 16-page book, The Story of Beetles, and I had a Clemson alum illustrate that. You fold it up and it turns into a 16-page book. Clemson Entomology Club puts together a very nice booth as well. And again, this has a wide variety of things that have to do with Clemson itself. I'm subject editor for two journals, Coleoptera Bulletin and Insectamundi. Yep. It's a lot of work. We do an enormous amount of outreach. We probably do two outreach events a month. Sometimes it's an hour or 2 hours away. Sometimes it's for half a day. Sometimes it's for an hour. I just have to say hooray to the undergraduates that help out. They're absolutely spectacular. Wheeler grants. We went to Georgia in 2022. This was a great trip. People got tattoos because of this trip. A guy got hired part-time at the Jones Center. It's a gargantuan 30,000 acre research space. We had an alligator show up to the blacklight. We went to Louisiana for a Wheeler grant. We went to Louisiana State University. We went to Audubon Insectarium's off-site insect rearing room. We had spectacular Louisiana food, homemade Louisiana food. We did a swamp tour, and we found a dead cow that was just rotten enough that you could pull pieces off of it, but not so rotten that you didn't smell it. But the kids loved that. They really did. I took a fun trip out west with a nephew of mine to do a little collecting. I ran over to Hawaii. I was invited to Hawaii by a colleague. The very first sample I looked at, we weren't doing anything with this, but the very first sample I looked at, there's 7 people in the world that know what that is, and magically I am one of them. So we described a new species. It's Neostinoptera. I took another fun trip around the Midwest with another nephew, collected a bunch of bugs. I'm publishing on some of that. If Al Wheeler will hurry up, because he's working on that. South Korea, a buddy of mine who's a professor in South Korea invited me over to do a little collaboration for the fun of it. We don't need to get into it, but he's a bit of a foodie, so we ate a lot of food. And traipsed all over the country, and I collected, again, a couple of thousand fun specimens, and hooray, and we got to come up with some fun, some work to do. In-house trips every year. We try to take a trip to Roan Mountain in June. We usually go with a guy named Wes Bika, who's a world expert on scorpion flies. There's some magnificent scorpion flies there. It's blow your mind. And we usually go in the middle of winter as well, because there are other scorpion flies that are out in winter. And so being on the top of Roan Mountain in winter, or there's some amazing stuff you can do in June. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. We try to go visit the synchronous fireflies in Great Smoky Mountains National Park every year. I take a group of students. We tour the park. We see the fireflies. We stay at a field station, and it's ever so much fun. Denise Furr is a researcher that can identify land snails. It's like winning the lottery. And so we started a snail collection at CUAC. We've got about 100 species now. Other stuff, I'm on a couple committees. I'm collaborating with a wide variety of people, many more than are here, but I can't remember everybody. Paul Baker, it's like I made a wish on a monkey paw. I don't know. I was running traps for him, 15 traps a week, spring, summer, and fall for the last 3 years, including blacklight traps, 3 blacklight traps. So you get a quart of bugs, takes 4, 5, 6 hours to sort through that. Magnificent stuff, but who has the time? So anyway, he's working on cerambycid beetles, longhorn beetles. You'll get to find about him later. I support a lot of graduate students. One of the best ones was Palin Tan. We went out earlier this summer or last year, spring. I can't remember. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. We were out collecting beautiful parts of South Carolina, collecting bugs in the middle of the night. It's ever so much fun. I got a bunch of spider projects somehow. Nothing to do with Joros, but I got a weird one that's a swapped species that's in the experimental forest, and so I need to do a survey for that next spring. South Carolina Species Wildlife Action Plan, they redo that every 10 years. So John and Michael and myself and people from all over the state and even the country have come together to find out what are the insects of conservation concern. Only 19 publications since I've been here, which is pretty pathetic, but I got 3 more in the hopper. I'm probably teaching a morphology course next semester because we have a bunch of students, undergrads, that want to get a minor, but there haven't been enough courses for them to complete a minor. Stump walk, but I don't have time to talk about it at the botanical garden, hopefully. 2 things that haven't happened yet. Nobody's come to me and talked about raising crickets, soldier flies, or mealworms yet in order to take some of this biological material that we've got, the coffee grounds and all the food that's thrown away at the grocery stores, and turn that into something that you can sell. Go buy mealworms on Etsy and see what happens. All of a sudden, you'll realize, whoa, there's money in trash. The other thing that I would love to get involved with is there seems to be a movement toward taking lawns that are very expensive to maintain. You got to water them, you got to fertilize them, you got to mow them, and making them cheap. And the way that they sell this is we're going to make them cheap, and it will help the plants, and it will help the bugs, and it will help the birds. But when you read the books, when you read the articles, they talk about the bugs more than they talk about the birds, which really blows me away. But I would love to see alternative lawns or pocket forests tried here in the area and look at how that affects insect populations. So, all right, we got a lot going on. My door is always open. Come by. I do a lot of crazy stuff, and it's a lot of fun. And you guys are all invited to the 3rd floor over at Long Hall anytime you like, if you can get in the building. And I have no idea if I have any time for questions, but thank you very much.
So you described Clemson as being disinterested in entomology, particularly.
Yeah.
Can you attribute that to something? I mean, it's unique.
It's a beautiful way of putting it. Yes, uniquely. I have no idea. I've been here 9 years. I don't know. When I got here, we still had quite a few faculty that have since retired. They hired 2 new faculty right after I got here. And like I said, they pretty much almost immediately left within a year or 2 for better jobs. And I have no idea because there is money in entomology. And now is the time when it is really branching out. Like I said, we have entomophagy. We've got a lot of different things going on that we didn't have 20 years ago. Insect pets, we didn't even, well, I don't have any insect pets, but there's money in that. If you want to spend $100 for a roly-poly, go to isopods.com, and you will have to fight to get those. Anyway, but I don't know.
It's something in the administration that begins. The faculty, we're such a small group now that it's hard to get right people to vote for prioritizing it.
So North Carolina just hired a new faculty member. Mississippi just hired 3 new PhDs. 2 are collection managers. 1 is in a postdoc that is specifically designed to move into a faculty member. Oh, that's Pat. And Pat is going to be teaching an aquatic entomology course next semester. She's very excited about that. LSU just hired somebody new, a new faculty member. And so I see a lot of growth in other places. So I don't know what's going on here. And everybody that we have here, we don't have any slackers. You know, I mean, it's not like you can say, well, Jim over there is not doing very well. We've got very, very successful people. Well, but I mean, but we have very successful people, and I'm not even going to count myself. Just John and Mike Caterino are enough to really establish the continued success of entomology here at Clemson.
Also, J.C. Chong recently left.
That's another loss. Yeah.
Well, Mike Caterino is the only paid faculty member on campus. We can't teach most of the courses that are in the Chevron because we don't have faculty on campus. But the other 4 faculty are off campus and not in a position to do teaching. So it's a challenge.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you.